Welcome to Critter Crusades, the show about ordinary people on extraordinary missions to help animals. I'm Missy Woodward. Today we have a fabulous guest, someone who does something really amazing for animals. He rehabilitates dogs. Brandon Fouchet, welcome to the show.
Well, nice to be here.
It's just amazing what you do. I've seen images of what you've done. I've seen video and heard about you. And you're not so much a dog trainer. Tell me what you do as a rehabilitator of dogs.
Well, as a rehabilitator, what we do is we really work with dogs that have behavioral issues, dogs that are quite different from the regular dogs that we have that sit, stay, come, and heal. These are dogs that are more passionate, more connected to the wolf side. And so when you work with these types of dogs, to me it's more rewarding because you're able to bring out the soft side of them. You know, that stress will reduce it. And that's really what it's all about. It's about stress.
I love what you're saying, though, the passion they have. Most people talk about how bad they are or their bad habits or something related to they're not doing what we want. So really, animals don't have to do what we want. Dogs, that's not what they're meant, right?
Well, yeah, nature had a plan for animals, and that plan was to be in touch with the wild side. That is more of the wolf side, and the humans are more interested in the domesticated side. Don't destroy things. Don't be aggressive. But we're missing being able to control that side of them by doing away with it, by thinking that I don't want to know about aggression. I don't want my dog to be aggressive. But it's actually the highest form of communication that a dog has. And it's very important for us to understand that if we're going to really calm our dogs down.
Now, you have an organization called caninecommunications.org, and you work and you help rehabilitate shelter dogs. You're helping people with dogs that might end up in the shelter.
Absolutely.
So you teach, you help other nonprofits. And then we have some tape that I'd like to roll that shows you in action, showing about what you do. And we'll go ahead and roll that now and see what you do.
Good to see everybody here. It's like we're interested in dogs, dog psychology, a little different from dog training. We want to talk about both dog training and dog psychology. And then we'll get the pros and cons. A lot of people have questions about why is there dog psychology? Why do we need that? What's the importance of a pack? What's the difference in training? My relationship with dogs is that I want to find out how they think. Why do they do the things that they do? Why is aggression so important in a dog environment? And why is it so negative to us? We look at aggression as though it's something negative, when it's a very intricate part of a dog's life. It is the highest form of communication that dogs have. And so I started raising dogs. And in raising dogs, with packs of dogs, you have aggression. My first dog's name was Mustafa. He was an 80-pound Shar-Pei. Okay. And they fought a lot. I called him my Frankenstein dog because he was always being stitched up. Yeah. So it became a challenge trying to understand aggression.
It's interesting how Mustafa, your first dog, was really the catalyst for all of this.
Yes.
And you had to learn, like the rest of us, what to do with our animals.
Yes.
And you didn't get it right off the bat.
Oh, no, I didn't.
What did you learn the most from him?
Well, I learned that dogs communicate. The highest form of communication is through aggression. And most dogs that are not balanced, they usually use aggression to try to balance things out. And it's basically from stress. So I learned that if we can reduce the stress, then we can control the hormone that causes aggression. And so that was the most important thing that I've learned with Mustafa. How to control that aggressive level. How to teach a dog to judge its level of aggression.
And were you successful with
Very
him?
successful.
And you had a wonderful, enjoyable life with him after you got to that point? Was it like,
Yes.
I know with my own personal dog that I had, it was many years of difficulty of trying to learn what to do. Of course, when they get to be more geriatric, they're all pretty easy because they're not
Exactly.
such difficult. But I bet the hardest thing is working with people.
Well, yes.
Trainers and the owners or
Absolutely.
guardians.
Because we're trying to train them to think like a dog. Whereas with dogs, we're really just trying to understand them. And it's very interesting because dogs are very efficient at understanding us. And because of that, we're happy. But we never really understand them. And that's the problem.
Now, you've talked about the wolf pack, and many dog trainers and other people that might consider themselves behavioralists are basing everything on the wolf. Explain how important it is for us to understand the wolf mentality, where dogs come from that lineage, and how it affects the dog that we know in our backyard and in our home.
Right. Well, most of what we dislike about dogs is really dated to the wolf. And because dogs are domesticated, we tend to think that we don't have to connect to that wolf side. So we're only dealing with control through a form of training. Sit, stay, come, heel, down, things of that nature. But those things are hormonal. So when a dog lies down, they lie down because nature tells them that they're tired, or because they're being dominated, and that's generally on the back. But when we say down, it's not because they're tired. It's because we have a plan for them. That is not hormonal. So they learn to do it because it's what a trick is. So we teach our dogs these tricks. But we find that ultimately, in order to get them to do it, we have to use positive reinforcement. And we have to be careful with that because positive reinforcement can end up being negative reinforcement.
How so?
Well, let's say you're standing with your dog and you're rubbing him, but he's aggressive to people. And you're saying, well, he's not being aggressive now. He's being such a good boy. And you're rubbing him. And then I stand up and he lunges. And you say, look, that's what I'm talking about. He's lunging at people. Well, it's because you've been telling him to do it. He's been looking at me and you've been stroking him.
Oh, we're the guilty party.
Right. So you're positively reinforcing a negative thought. So we must make sure that the dog is facing us when we show affection, not looking away from us.
Oh, okay. And as far as how you relate what you do, let's say you've got a Chihuahua. Most people are going to have a hard time thinking that little thing came from a wolf.
Right.
Do they work in the same way? All these breeds work the same way as the wolf?
Absolutely. It's just a little dog or big dog in a little dog's body. That's all it is.
Oh, they're hardwired still the same way.
Absolutely, right.
Even if they have a little fur coat on or something like that, that
it
they're wearing a
doesn't matter. Right.
little pearl collar,
Sure.
they're still the same thing. And they can actually, how many do we see in the shelters? I mean, tons. You see the
Tons.
little dogs in the shelters because, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that if you keep them off the ground, like many people carry them as little
Trophies,
pieces,
right.
trophies, that they are not able to defend themselves. So what they do is they do the bark or the nipping.
Right.
So that ruins them as an animal that anybody can have, a child
Absolutely. It
especially.
becomes a learned behavior.
What other forms of behavior from the wolf should we note and be very careful about that we might misconstrue? There are other things that dogs do that we don't understand.
Right. Well, mostly people are trying to prevent a dog from experiencing things, and this creates stress. Dogs are much like kids. They have to go and investigate something, and then based on what happens there, they determine whether it's good or bad. Much like a kid, if you're ironing clothing and you put the iron down and the child touches it, we try to prevent them from touching it. Well, they'll never know that it's hot until they actually touch it. So when we prevent a dog from experiencing things, it creates stress. So as humans, we have to learn how to allow for them to communicate by experiencing things in life so that they reduce stress. That's the way we control energy.
So we might misconstrue something they're doing when they walk up nose to tail, meet each other, the way they might interact at the dog park. Sometimes one dog picks on another. Can you explain, what are we supposed to be looking for?
Well, first of all, we're traveling at a different rate that a dog would travel. When a dog sees something in the distance, the brain begins to race, the heart begins to pound, but the body is not moving at the same rate. So when they approach this thing, they lunge. You understand?
Oh.
Right. So when we approach at the same rate physically that the heart and mind is working, they're reducing stress before they get there.
Interesting. And when you see two dogs looking like they're going to fight, explain that.
Well, it's usually because they're on a leash. That's a man-made device. And when we pull in the opposite direction, we create stress because we're not allowing for nature to do what it normally does. Dogs have a certain way of approaching the certain areas that they smell with a certain body language. So if we interfere with that language, we create stress, the dog becomes unbalanced, and then that's when the aggression comes in.
And you have mentioned something also, you know, like when they meet, one may go down on a back. Explain that, like when they're trying to communicate with each other and one is dominating the other and all of that.
Yeah, domination and discipline is two different things. Discipline is something that all pack members do. Domination is left for alpha. So alpha is really one that rules by strength of personality. So if their personality is dominant, then the one that is submissive, they will do what nature tells them to do. And that's how our relationship with our dogs work best, when we let them know that we're in charge, because they take the submissive role.
And you can do that without a touch even.
Absolutely.
Now I know we have some interesting tape that you brought that shows this, and you said, well, explain what you said about the tape. I think people rarely have seen something like
most people don't see domination in a true form. They think of domination as something that's physical, but it's really mental. It's strength of personality. So when you see true domination, you see dominance and submission on its highest level.
Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and roll
Sure.
that tape and see what that's about.
Sounds good. When you've ever seen true domination, when the alpha dominates, he never touches. His personality causes him to just flip over. Yeah. Well, at home. This starts at home. People ask me, what's the best way to stop a fight? It's before a fight ever starts. Okay? It's through domination. Let's say a dog is just lying on his dog bed, not doing anything wrong, just lying there. You go over and create a disturbance which causes him to scatter, flip him off his bed, and then you stand on the bed. It's mine. Right? Now, we're talking about the way dogs think, and we're talking about the way people think. Right? People psychology, child psychology is different from dog psychology. Right? Dogs expect for us to think like them. But people expect for dogs to understand what we want from them, but that's not the way nature wired them.
So we want them to think that we are always the boss.
Absolutely.
It is okay.
That's interesting. My first reaction was, oh my gosh, that dog's going to kill that other little dog.
Sure.
And he was simply saying, just back off? Or what was he saying?
He's saying that I'm an alpha. Do you accept me as your leader? If you accept me as your leader, then submit. If you submit in the fashion that this pit bull was submitting, its adolescent behavior, then it causes the alpha to be gentler with him. But if he resists, then they fight.
And is this what you see on an everyday basis in your work, or what do you see? What's a normal day for Brandon?
This is exactly what I see. And when I see this, I know my job is done, because this is a nice, balanced dog. He's a dog that will listen to you when he is at 10. You can bring him from 10 to 1 because he has learned to judge his level of aggression. This is really what it's all about.
So do you have your own dog, or do you have just many dogs that you work with at a time?
Many dogs that I work with at a time, and I have my own dogs. They help to rehabilitate.
Oh, okay, so you have your own staff.
Right. I'll take dogs that no one wants, or dogs that I have found, and I'll bring them into my pack and teach them to judge their level of aggression, and they learn how to help me rehabilitate other dogs.
And do you adopt those dogs out at some point?
Absolutely.
How wonderful of an organization that you came up with this, that you can work and again, like you're helping rehabilitate from other groups, you're working with other rescue groups,
Right.
you're working with the ones that you find. Is it ever ending? Do you see a light at the end of this tunnel with what the need is, in especially a city as large as Los Angeles, with the animals in shelters?
Yes. I think there's a new way that we have to think about animals. We have to understand that they are more than just a pet to be loved. They are something that we must communicate and understand in order for our quality of life to change. There are many, many dogs that are being destroyed because we don't understand them, and it's because we don't understand our relationship with dogs. So it helps us to help them.
What was it like for you as a kid? Did you have lots of pets, or did you have any?
I've had lots of pets. I was the kid that if you were looking for your dog, he was probably in our yard sitting on a box.
What was your very first animal?
A bird.
I guessed that it was not going to be a dog.
Right.
I actually had thought it might be a turtle, actually.
And it was. I had a bird and a turtle.
That's funny. I don't know why, because it seems like you're the type that wanted to investigate all species.
Yes.
Starting at the very far back.
That's right.
What do you see as goals for your organization? Where are you headed?
Well, I think that we need to look at things a little different. We need to look at how we are communicating with dogs in terms of what they need and what we need, and how to bring that together. How to match a dog's with the human. That's important. I have different philosophy about where we should go. I brought some tape about that too, what I think about it. And I think it pretty much speaks for itself.
Right. So let me ask you, on the aspect of where rescue groups are right now, with they work with a lot of trainers, they work with behavioralists, they work with different things. What do you see are good directions they're going, and what do you see are problems that they keep enforcing, that it's going to keep this a problem, like so many animals unable to be adopted?
Right. I think all of those things are in the correct direction, but the level at which they're using them. Training is a very big thing. We all know about it, but there is a place for training. When a dog has behavioral issues, training is not the way to reach the dog. Training comes after a dog is nice and balanced, or a dog knows his relationship with you. Then we can teach him to do these tricks that are very popular in terms of telling the owner that they have control, being able to make him do these things. But we first must understand that the behavior part must be dealt with first.
Your organization offers different things. Now, you board rescued animals. You also work with them and exercise them. You have play groups. You go hiking. So somebody could actually have a problem dog, as I don't really mean to say that way, but a dog with some issues.
Sure. What
would that dog's life be like coming on board with you for its temporary time? What would it look like?
Doggytopia. We do everything that a dog wants and needs to do first, before I ask him to do what the human wants. That's so important, to free a dog so that he doesn't feel stressed about conforming to our way of life. Just give him what he needs first. Give him what he wants.
He doesn't just walk in and get in a pack of 25 dogs and take off on a hike.
No. He has to observe behaviors that imprint his mind. So he observes fear, he observes aggression, he observes playtime, he observes solitude, he observes me interacting with all of the dogs. So he learns a formula first. The first formula that he learns is, this is where you sleep, this is where you eat, this is where you eliminate, this is where you go for walks. And when he learns that, so that I can open a door and he goes out, I open the door and he comes in, then he's ready to start working with the other dogs. But first, he doesn't know where he belongs. So when we give him a sense of where he belongs first, then he can begin to express his feelings in other ways.
Was this a mastermind idea that you came up with? I think I'm going to create a facility and an organization like this, or did it evolve?
Both. It was already played out in my mind. It was just a matter of doing it.
What did you start with first?
You mean
as far as getting your organization to where it is, did you first just work with shelter animals? Did you work with rescue groups, or how did you get the group going?
Well, I really worked with private individuals first, because that was available. But I started working with rescue organizations because it was less of the ego for the individual, where private people wanted, look at what my dog can do, right? Well, rescuers just wanted to solve the problem. And so that was intriguing to me. They wanted to solve the problem to get the dog a home. So my first priority was to understand why dogs did the things that they did. And not to look at the symptom of the problem. That's a very big thing that we have to understand. Most people call and say, my dog is doing this or they're doing that. To me, that's the symptom. The problem, you can't see it. So when we solve the problem, that symptom just disappears.
What percentage of the problem do you think is human, and what percentage of the problem is the actual dog?
Well, I think that dogs don't have a problem. I think that they are a problem to us. Therefore, they're a problem to society. And that's why we shorten their lives. But if we can understand that this is just a wolf trait, that this is just nature displaying what it was supposed to do, then it could help us to deal with this. It's more looking at it like microscopically looking at the way dogs are. Will help us. We'll say, okay, we know that nature created you this way, so I'm not going to get mad at you for doing those things that nature said do. But I'm going to teach you how to do what humans want so that we can have werewolves, dogs that are half human, half wolf. And that's okay because that's domestication.
A werewolf. You always have a different picture for what a werewolf is, you know.
Right.
But in that, do you think, you know, some people will say that it's unfair that that animal is being forced to be like us. But to live in society, for them to keep existing, they really do have to conform.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important for humans to learn that ugly word domination does not mean what it means on a human level as it does on a dog's level. If we understand domination and submission, then we have a better relationship with our dog. But this domination is something that humans, they don't give a minute to listen to it. They say, domination, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But it's very important. If you see a wolf pack, dominance and submission is what keeps a pack of wolves together. Physically impossible for two wolves, alpha, male and female, to physically control a pack. But mentally, they do. And this is psychology.
You had a dream for animals, and we're going to play the tape about where it's going and what you want to see
Okay,
for
sounds
the
good.
animals.
I would like to see not shelters, but rehabilitation centers where rescuers would learn how to dominate and to rehabilitate so that we can save more dogs' lives. And these tests that they do, the temperament testing, is testing that is done with a stressed, caged animal. And they need to be taken out of those cages and really done real tests on them so that these dogs don't have to die. There's no reason for that. But it's not going to take place until everyone starts a new way of thinking about how to deal with dogs. I don't want you to take a deaf ear to dominance because there's a lot of information in dominance and aggression and being an alpha. There's a lot. Much, much more than what we talked about today. We've only talked about, we scratched the surface of it. There's so much information, we can talk for days about this. I live with these guys 24/7, and we do all kinds of things together. I have taken dogs that were serious killers and put them with packs, and they're fine. And then they go to a home, and they call me back, and it's maybe months later, and they'll say, he attacked this dog, or this dog did this. And I talk to them, and I ask them about the lifestyle at that home. And then I see where the problem is. It's the person, not understanding how dogs think. So it's up to us to find out how we should be communicating with our dogs. We have to give them more credit. They're not just this animal that's there for us to love. They're simple-minded creatures, but they're able to perform complex tasks. They can tell if we're having seizures, heart attacks. They can track miles and miles and find people, smell body parts under the water. We're not even touching on their abilities. We're having problems with walking, and barking behind fences. So that means that people have to be more in tune. The information has to be given to you, not on a training level, not on a sit, stay, come, heel. If that was all there was, we wouldn't be having these problems. We wouldn't be killing dogs. I just think that we need to know how to communicate with our dogs on their level. And remember that dogs expect for us to think like them. And humans expect for dogs to understand what we want from them. But that's not the way nature wired them. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of information to get. And I think there's a series that we're thinking about of doing of this type of seminar. This is just the opening, and we can get more specific about specific themes as time goes on. You know, this is just to open it up to see what kind of questions we're going to be dealing with.
Well, that's wonderful. I think it really is about communication.
Yes.
I think communication with the animals, communication about the problems that we face in the shelter systems.
Yes.
I think we have to do a lot of talking on both sides because
Exactly.
there's so many issues that these beautiful animals have to deal with in the world with humans. When we interfered in their world, that's where I think a lot of the problems happen. Thank you so much for being here. The work you do is just amazing. And I know for people that want to get in touch with the organization, it's www.caninecommunications.org. And if somebody has a problem with animals, shelter group that might want to get involved with you, a rescue group, they can talk to you and see how you might be able to help facilitate some care for these animals.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and keep doing the great work that you do. It's just incredible.
Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us here on Critter Crusades, the show about ordinary people on extraordinary missions to help animals. Go out there and make a difference. Communicate with your dog or your cat. And remember, don't litter, spay and neuter. Thanks for joining us.
Great.